Everyone thinks being left behind happens because life was unfair. Machiavelli believed something colder. People are defeated long before life defeats them, not by failure, by the story they keep telling themselves. Think about that. Two people lose the same opportunity. One quietly rebuilds. The other spends years asking, "Why me?" The event was the same. The story was different. And that story decided everything that came after. By the end of this video, you'll see why the greatest prison isn't failure. It's the invisible story you've accepted as truth. And there's one habit almost every broken person repeats every single morning without realizing it. Have you ever looked around and felt like everyone else was moving forward except you? A friend gets promoted, someone starts a business, another person gets married, someone younger than you reaches the goal you've been chasing for years. You smile, you congratulate them. But on the way home, one quiet thought begins to grow. Maybe I'm just falling behind. At first, it feels like a passing thought. Then it becomes a belief. Soon, it becomes your identity. This is where most people make their first mistake. They believe failure changed who they are. It didn't. Failure happened once. The story you repeated afterward kept hurting you every day. Almost nobody notices this. Your mind is always trying to explain what happens to you. When something goes wrong, it wants a reason. Sometimes the reason is true. Sometimes it's just the easiest story to believe. I wasn't good enough. I'm too late. People like me never succeed. The longer you repeat these thoughts, the more familiar they become. And familiar thoughts begin to feel like facts. But they are not facts. They are stories. Stories can guide you. Stories can also trap you. Imagine watching your closest friends succeed while your own life feels frozen. You don't just feel disappointed. You quietly compare. Then you start measuring your future using someone else's present. Without noticing, your attention leaves your own path. It follows theirs instead. This is how people slowly lose themselves, not in one dramatic moment, but through thousands of quiet comparisons. Machiavelli understood something that many people still refuse to accept. People rarely lose because of one bad event. They lose because they build their identity around that event. The moment you call yourself broken, your mind begins looking for proof. Every mistake confirms it. Every delay supports it. Every rejection becomes evidence. You stop seeing possibilities. You only see confirmation. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Life doesn't ask who deserves another chance. Life simply responds to those who keep moving. That sounds cold, because it is. Nature doesn't reward fairness. It rewards adaptation. The strongest tree isn't always the oldest. It's the one that keeps growing after every storm. Now ask yourself one question. If someone erased every painful label you've given yourself, would your future look different? Most people answer yes. Then why keep protecting those labels? Stop for a second. What if the person you've been trying to become is exactly what's keeping you trapped? The version of you that constantly needs proof. The version that waits for perfect timing. The version that keeps asking life for permission. Maybe that version doesn't need motivation. Maybe it needs to disappear. And this leads to the hidden habit that quietly steals years from people's lives. It doesn't look dangerous. In fact, it feels responsible. It feels patient. It even feels wise. But it slowly becomes an addiction. We're only getting started. Because the biggest mistake hasn't even been revealed yet. Most people don't stay stuck because they enjoy being stuck. They stay stuck because waiting feels safe. Think about it. If you never start, you never fail again. If you delay the decision, you delay the pain. For a moment, that feels like peace, but it isn't peace. It's protection. Protection from uncertainty. Protection from disappointment. Protection from hearing the answer you don't want. The strange part is that your brain rewards this behavior. Every time you avoid a difficult step, you feel temporary relief. That relief teaches you something dangerous. It teaches you that waiting works, but waiting doesn't solve fear. It only hides it. Here's something most people never question. How many dreams have quietly expired while waiting for the right time? Not because they were impossible, because tomorrow always sounded safer than today. Imagine someone who wants to start a new career. Every week they say the same thing. I'll begin when I know more. Months pass, then years. One day they realize they weren't preparing. They were postponing. Read that again in your mind. Waiting isn't always patience. Sometimes it's fear wearing a respectable disguise. This is why hope alone can become a weakness. That sounds strange. Hope is important, but hope without action becomes a comfortable prison. You begin believing that one day everything will magically line up. The perfect mood, the perfect opportunity, the perfect confidence. Machiavelli never built his thinking around perfect conditions. He observed reality. He knew uncertainty never disappears. The people who gain influence are rarely the ones who feel ready. They are the ones who act while still feeling uncertain. That is the difference. Most people negotiate with uncertainty. Strategic people accept it. Here's the hidden enemy: not failure, not bad luck, not other people. The invisible habit of waiting. Every day it whispers the same lie. Not yet. Tomorrow it says it again, then again. Eventually, not yet quietly becomes never. This changes everything. The question is no longer, when will life give me another chance? The real question becomes, why am I asking life for permission to begin? That question is uncomfortable because it removes the excuse. It hands responsibility back to you, and responsibility feels heavy until you realize something surprising. It's also freedom, because the moment your future depends on your choices instead of your circumstances, you stop feeling powerless. But here's what almost nobody notices. Even after people stop waiting, many still stay trapped. Why? Because they keep explaining their failures to everyone around them, and that silent habit gives away more power than failure ever could. If this way of thinking helps you see yourself more clearly, Elu Codex is built for people who would rather face uncomfortable truths than comforting illusions. Because in the next part, we'll uncover the lesson Machiavelli understood about failure that most people never see, and why real power begins the day you stop explaining your losses. Most people think power begins after success. Machiavelli saw something different. He believed power begins the moment you stop letting failure tell you who you are. Think about that. The world does not remember how many times you fell. It remembers what you became after falling. But here's what almost nobody notices. There is one habit powerful people rarely talk about. They stop explaining their losses. When something goes wrong, most people rush to justify it. I didn't have enough support. It wasn't the right time. They were lucky. Maybe some of those reasons are true, but every explanation you repeat becomes another reason to stay where you are. Machiavelli understood that excuses do not protect your future. They protect your old identity. Imagine you lose an important opportunity, maybe a job, maybe a relationship, maybe a dream you worked on for years. You have two choices. The first is to spend months asking why it happened. The second is to quietly ask, what did this teach me that comfort never could? The event is the same. The future is not. Failure is information, nothing more, nothing less. The people who become stronger are not the ones who avoid pain. They are the ones who refuse to waste it. Here's the uncomfortable part. Suffering does not automatically make people wiser. It often makes them more bitter. The difference is not the pain. The difference is the response. Machiavelli never admired people who simply survived. He admired people who adapted, because life rewards adaptation far more than emotion. We're only halfway through, and we still haven't reached the biggest lie people tell themselves after failure. Before we continue, think honestly. What's one story you've been telling yourself that no longer serves you? Write it in the comments. Sometimes seeing the story written down is the first step to leaving it behind. Now comes the uncomfortable truth. Many people never recover from failure, not because they are weak, but because they are waiting for someone else to notice their effort. Imagine you wake up tomorrow, you work hard, you improve yourself, you stay disciplined, but nobody praises you, nobody claps, nobody even notices. Would you still continue? Pause for a second. Your answer reveals more about your future than your current situation. Every time your confidence depends on another person's opinion, you quietly hand them control over your emotions. That is how power leaves without making the sound. Approval feels good. There is nothing wrong with that. The danger begins when approval becomes necessary, because now your peace belongs to someone else. A stranger's opinion changes your mood. A friend's silence changes your confidence. One rejection changes your identity. Think about how much control that gives away. Machiavelli understood that people can only manipulate the emotions you refuse to manage yourself. If your worth rises and falls with attention, you will always chase attention. And people who chase are rarely in control. Real confidence is quieter. It does not need witnesses. It does not need applause. It keeps building even when nobody is watching. That is why some people look calm during difficult times. They are no longer asking the world for permission to continue. They already gave themselves permission. The next idea is uncomfortable, but it is the one that changes everything. If this way of thinking helps you see yourself more clearly, Elu Codex is built for people who would rather face uncomfortable truth than comforting lies, because every strong mind begins with one honest realization. Many people say they want a new life. Few realize they first need a new identity. The biggest mistake hasn't even been revealed until now. It was never failure. It was never bad luck. It was the habit of waiting for life to choose you, waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting to be noticed, waiting for proof that you matter. But waiting quietly becomes a way of living, and one day, years have passed. This is where everything changes. Near the beginning, we asked whether life really left you behind. Now you know the answer. Life moved. You stopped moving with it. That sounds harsh, but it is also freeing. Because if your choices help create the problem, your choices can also create the solution. Remember the person who watched others succeed and believed they were too late. That person was never defeated by success. They were defeated by comparison. Remember the silence after your hard work went unnoticed. That silence was not proof that you had no value. It was simply a moment that your mind turned into a permanent story, and stories can be rewritten. Near the beginning, I mentioned that your greatest failure might actually be protecting you. Here's why. Failure strips away illusions. It shows who keeps moving without applause. It reveals whether you are building for attention or for purpose. Sometimes losing the wrong path is the only way to find the right one. The person who started this video does not have to exist tomorrow. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you stop carrying an identity built on old pain. You stop introducing yourself through your failures. You stop measuring your future with yesterday's results. You stop asking if life is fair. Instead, you ask a different question. What can I control today? That question changes everything, because control creates action. Action creates momentum. Momentum slowly creates a new identity. And one day people will call you resilient. They will think you were naturally strong. They will never see the quiet decisions that built that strength. That is how real transformation happens, silently, slowly, without needing permission. Before you leave, answer one question. If you could erase one belief that keeps you feeling behind, what would it be? I'd like to read your answer. Someone else might need it too. Machiavelli's greatest lesson was never about controlling other people. It was about refusing to let your own emotions control you. The moment you stop chasing fairness, you stop waiting to be rescued. The moment you stop needing approval, you begin taking your power back. The moment you stop explaining your losses, you finally start learning from them. The weak mindset waits to be chosen. The stronger mindset quietly chooses its own path. If you're rebuilding from the inside, stay with Ilu Codex. Every video is another reminder that real power is rarely loud. It is built in silence and remembered long after the noise fades.